So here we have the AL33 site. That is a famous site that was excavated in the 1970s during the International Afar Research Expedition, co-directed by Donald Johanson. And in 1975, they excavated a hillside called Afar Locality 333, nicknamed the First Family Site. And on that hillside, there were a bunch of fossils, around 216 fossils, some just exposed on the surface, eroding out of the hillside, some were in situ, but they excavated those. And here's where they're shown. Notice right here where my pointer is showing. All those loose, isolated bones were recovered from the family site. And Johansen, we'll get into this in a moment, originally called those bones Homo, meaning human. A year before that, Donald Johanson found Lucy, the partial skeleton that is laying sideways on the table. But originally, it was considered a combination of both Australopithecus and Homo. A lot of people don't know that, but that's a fact. That is not what's taught today. What's taught today is that all of these bones are Australopithecus, and none of them are human. But originally, that's not what they said. And so it says, Johansen originally attributed the first family collection of 216 bones to Homo, a family that was struck down all at once in a flash flood. Notice he's describing these bones as looking just like modern humans. Here's another example from the family site. Again, this site he originally called Homo. Even today, in more recent papers, they describe the AL33 composite hand, the same one Johansen said was human. They say our results indicate that afarensis possessed overall hand proportions, including an increased thumb-hand relationship, that contrary to previous reports is fully human. But keep in mind, they don't believe it's actually human in terms of its classification. They think it's Australopithecus today, but they're admitting the morphology, the anatomy is fully human. Now, today, they would say that that human hand, even though it is unmistakably human, must have belonged to Lucy's kind. Why? Because of its presumed age. And because Donald Johanson changed his mind and reclassified his entire first family site, which he originally thought was human, he classified it as a single new species, Lucy's kind, Australopithecus afarensis. But basically, there's all kinds of evidence of human fossils dating 3 to 4 million years ago. They're described as human, originally considered to be human taxonomically. Johansen even says in his own book, I was convinced there were 2 species in Hadar. But then something happened in the summer of 1977. He met with Tim White, and Tim White was previously working with Mary Leakey, but he defected, having a bitter dispute with her, joined Donald Johanson, and convinced Donald Johanson to classify all of his fossils, the entire Hadar collection, including Mary Leakey's fossils from Laetoli. Classify all of those dating around 3 to 4 million years, not as Homo and Australopithecus, like he originally said, but instead he said, let's classify all of those as a single new species, Australopithecus afarensis. And what was their basis for it? It was entirely based on jaws and teeth. They both did their dissertations on jaws and teeth. They had no time to study all the postcranial anatomy, like the neck down. And on that basis, they reclassified all the human limb bones to afarensis, all the human jaw bones to afarensis, human hand bones, human foot bones, and other things that were out of place. They redated younger in order to maintain Lucy and Lucy's species as a very important root ancestor to humans. If originally, and the morphology of the bone clearly shows there's human bones and Australopithecus bones mixed together, how could Johansen get away with calling them all the same species? Wouldn't they have a very wide range of variation in the bones? Wouldn't some bones look more ape-like and some bones look more human-like? Wouldn't that be obvious? Well, it was obvious. And so he had to come up with an explanation for that. And his explanation was something called sexual dimorphism. Does anyone know what that is? Differences between males and females of the same species. Basically, they're saying the females were smaller, more ape-like in their morphology, not only in size, but more challenging, more preposterous. They were claiming the females had bones that were shaped more for arboreal locomotion. And the males were larger, and they had a skeleton from the neck down, looked more human-like. So this type of sexual dimorphism relating to locomotor behavior is unprecedented, is what they're admitting. In simple language, they're saying, look, this has all the features of a typical modern human foot. And this foot was not found connected to a creature with an ape skull. So there's no way they can claim this belonged to an ape. And I would say the reason why it looks human is simply because it is human. But because it dates to 3 to 4 million years ago, they can't call it human. Instead, they call it Lucy's kind Australopithecus afarensis.